Last week, Neal invited me onto his channel. We had a great conversation, and you can find the link to it in the description, but here is a clip from what we talked about.
And I remember his conversation with, I think it was Matthew Pajot. I think it was Matthew. It was either Jonathan or Matthew, uh, where the feminine is that which poses the frame or poses the problem or poses the question. It creates the space that allows the masculine to then act. And okay, so where this is relevant, I think the single greatest mistake of Protestantism is getting rid of Mary. So you could say it's the removal of all of the saints, like the whole litany of saints. But the Roman Catholic Church puts Mary at the top of that. Mary's the mother of the church. She's also emblematic of the church, almost like a boat that's carrying us all to the promised land, to the shore. Um, and I know in Orthodoxy that Theotokos, but we just say Mary, the Mother of God, Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Now, the thing that blew my mind, and this is from a Catholic theologian, his name is Brant Petrie, um, is a few things related to Mary. Jesus actually begins his ministry at age 12. The only story that we have, so let me explain that. The only story we have of Jesus between his very early days as an infant and as an adult is that story of the temple at age 12. Um, my understanding and my Jewish brothers and sisters and people who know the history of Judaism better than I do, but my understanding is that when you were a Jewish boy, Second Temple period, you're a Jewish boy at age 12, that is when you can pick your profession. That is when you begin your apprenticeship, basically. And so for 3 days, he's missing from Mary and Joseph, which that's relevant too. And they find him in the temple, which is basically the feminine space that God enters into. They find him in the temple. And Mary says to him, "My son, didn't you know that your father and I have been looking for you?" It's not Joseph who speaks. It's Mary who speaks and says, like, "Jesus, what the heck?" Like, we were really scared. And Jesus says to her, "Don't you know that I'm supposed to be in my father's house?" That, like, he's basically beginning his mission right then and there, but it's Mary that stops it. In effect, what Mary's doing is saying, "No, no, 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 no. God, you are not taking away my 12-year-old son from me now. You're not doing it." Like, Mary basically puts pause on the start of Jesus's ministry. And it says, and he was obedient to them. That's what it says, the line. So Jesus goes back with Mary and Joseph. And then, okay. So fast forward, 18 years? Joseph has since passed away, it's assumed, because he's no longer spoken about. And they're at the wedding at Cana. And Mary says to her son, she's like, Jesus, my son, they have no wine. And Jesus' response, I just love it. It's like, "Woman, what does this have to do with me? Like, what, like, why is it my problem that your friend's wedding doesn't have wine?" And then, like, I could just imagine them exchanging glances. And it's like that subtle feminine signal where Mary knows exactly what she's doing. She knows exactly what she's doing. But she is basically saying in that moment to Jesus, "I am creating the frame. I am creating the space. I am releasing you." This is because she knows, and the reason I can say this is, like, the prophecy in the temple. I think it was Simeon. I could be getting that wrong,
Yeah.
but the prophecy in the temple where Jesus presented in the temple, and he says, "And a sword will pierce your heart also, so that the thoughts of many hearts shall be revealed." It's a prophecy. And it says Mary kept all these things in her heart. And she knows that when she initiates Jesus to begin doing miracles, that starts a countdown for the end of her son's life. Basically, she's turning him back over to the world and to God and saying, "I release you." So it's Mary that stops Jesus initially starting, and or pauses it, you could say, and it's Mary who resumes it and begins it and poses the question. And the other thing that this Catholic theologian said is like, okay, who is the most powerful woman in Judaism, in ancient Judaism? And you would think it's like, oh, the wife of the king. It's like, no, 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 no. It's the mother of the king. And if you needed to get something done, whatever it is in ancient Judaism, you would go to the mother of the king, because the person who actually has the king's ear, no king is going to refuse his mother. You go to the mother of the king. And that's exactly why Catholics say the rosary, pray to Mary, but it's for Mary to petition the king. It's for Mary to go on our behalf to her son. And
Right.
and honestly, me growing up in Protestantism, because I grew up PCUSA, like praying to Mary is not something that has come natural to me at all. But I deeply sense that it's one of the things that Catholicism has got absolutely right. Yeah, for all the reasons that you're outlining. So
So I want to jump back to something you said, because you said something about the feminine speaking first, right?
yeah, yeah,
Okay. The absolute unit that is the Menha record. Chapter 1 of their temple teaching. For just for background, Pa Eloe is the mother, and Si Eloe is the father. And they refer to each other as Elohim. So, the very beginning, Pa Eloe speaking, ponder the deep, Elohim. Is it not a great question? That thing that you just said of setting the frame. Then Si Eloe says, look out into the deep, Elohim, and tell me what you see. Now, Pa Eloe, I see space there, space to fill, space to build, space to do a great thing. Long have I pondered the deep and wondered why it remains so dark and empty. Should it not be filled with light? Should it not be filled with wonder and beauty? Where we are, there is light and truth. Our own parents provided this for us, and we rose up by line and by precept to become like them. I'm sorry, I'm just reading this again for the first time after reading the Birkenau tablets, and there is a commonality here that is adding meaning to this right now as I read it. Why do we look out upon the deep and see emptiness? It is a thing that should not be. See Aloe speaking. We look upon where we are and see what is real. Out yonder, there is no one to see us. Indeed, there is no one to see at all. What need then has the deep of light and wonder and beauty? Our work is for the world in which we find ourselves. Why should we ask for more than what is? So, this is the beginning of their conversation about why they should have a creation. Um, Now, I find it amazing that observation you make about how it's the feminine that sets the frame, and this runs straight into something that I first heard a year ago when I went to the Book of Mormon Heartland / Ojibwe Outreach Conference, and that is this was an Ojibwe teaching, the feather teaching, and I hope I can do it justice because it's a teaching on the relationship between the masculine and the feminine. And uh, I believe the person I first heard it from was her name's Sherry Cardinal, and she taught it very well. But there, you have a feather, and you observe the feather, how there's a narrow side and a wide side to a feather, and the narrow side is the leading edge, and the wide side is the trailing edge. And in order for a feather to contribute to flight, what you need is for that narrow side to set the direction that the that in relationship to the air that it's going through, and it's actually the wider part of the feather that is doing the real lifting. And the feather teaching tells us that that narrow side that sets the direction is actually the feminine, which is very much what you were just saying about Mary guiding Jesus's life. And the wide side is the masculine, and that is the role of the masculine is to do the lifting that the feminine is not able to. And it gets into the whole thing of the strength of the woman is in her generations, and the strength of the man is just his strength, like the things that he can physically do. And you need the wisdom of the woman to help with, like, or even to guide decision making for making decisions that are in the best interest of her children. So this is another thing that is in the that first chapter of the Nemenha record. So as a little bit of background, um, the in the Book of Mormon, you have this story where you've got this king. His name is King Mosiah. He was a really good king. The king before him was a really good king. Like they taught the people to have good faith. They didn't tax the people. They actually worked for their own support instead of just living off of the people around them. And they observed that if it were possible that you could always have a good king, it would be fine to have kings. But you can't rely on that because the bad kings just have a really funny way of just showing up in very short order. It's the Saul problem. Who in all of Israel is like unto Saul? And what does he try to do? He's trying to kill David in like not very long. So what uh, what Mosiah comes up with is a system of judges where you have lower judges and you have higher judges, and that there are some checks and balances. If one judge is misbehaving, other judges can be like, no, this isn't what we're going to do. So there's a sense of quorum and like self-regulation that's part of it. um we in in the Book of Mormon, we see that system of government ends up basically with a unfortunate amount of corruption. And that's actually a big part of why it is that Hagoth takes his journey, is they're trying to get away from the corruption and the things that are going on. And in that first in that book of Hagoth, which is just one long chapter, so it's not really broken up into chapters. In the book of Hagoth, uh, what they end up doing is they they start asking Hagoth if he will be their king, and he does the exact same thing Nephi did when after they had arrived, and he says, really, guys, we don't need to have a king. Like that's not going to be a good thing for us. Even though Nephi didn't want to be a king, they still like called who came after him king, and it was kings all the way down until we get to King Benjamin and then King Mosiah that follows King after King Benjamin. Uh, But what Hagoth does, and what they recognize is this system of judges was corruptible. And so they decide to make an adjustment to how the system of judges works. And their adjustment is no man can just seek the office of being judge. The judges are still voted on by the people, but it is the mothers who do the nominating. And the reasoning, actually, I'll bet I could find it in just a very short moment. So here we have it's in Book of Hagoth, starting in 61. Now we have seen how even those chosen by the people to be judges might become unjust if those people fall into wickedness. Wherefore we chose and designated the mothers of our children as those who should elect the judges, and that no action would be decided by one judge, but by a council of judges. In this way, if the judges become unjust, it is only because the whole people have fallen into wickedness. For mothers of our children have always been meeker and more naturally prone to righteousness than are men. Verily, men have need of physical strength and will often become puffed up in that strength and will use it to rule over others. But the mother's strength is in her children. Wherefore do they the more often choose according to that which is better for the little ones. This is wisdom, and because of this, we have seen less strife than the Nephiha in the Wayna Stitzpah. So their whole thing is uh, because mothers are going to make better long-term decisions. That's why they're the first pass at picking leaders. Now they have other things that go on and how they pick their leaders. They have things like you have the maximum size for a city in their society is 150 to 200 families. Once you get up to that size, you have to split off and form another city down the way a little bit. And
So they
you know,
deliberately Dunbar
interesting
number.
things like that.
Yeah.
What's that?
So they deliberately set a Dunbar number.
Uh-huh. There's actually a whole book in here about how one of their cities got completely destroyed because they violated that. Because there's something magical about when you limit your community size, like they never stopped having all things in common with each other. Like that was the order of things when they were on the boats traveling to the land northward. But after that, they just continued the same social order. And that rule of no more than 150 to 200 families was in service of the fact, and it is written, I forget where. I've read a number of different things in the Menha. It is written somewhere that it's because for a community to have all things in common, if you get larger than that size of community, you lose the ability for everyone to be able to see and verify the need for the things that they are helping to produce. You know, you economics is still economics. It's specialization still matters. Even in, what we would call a primitive culture, you have people who will specialize in different tasks. You will have people who make pots, you will have people who make tools. And if you're a person who makes these things, you can see, oh yeah, there's a few people who need things. I'll make this many this week. And like that's your part of the community. And the people who do the farming will say, oh yeah, well we do need to make sure we get enough food for everyone. They're making stuff for everyone else, and like they're making some of the tools that I need. So, like it's a very good reciprocal situation. And
It reminds me of the Amish.
uh-huh.
They draw the line at yeah. What would be the Amish equivalent with modern technology? Like what's the like? I thought to myself, like, how many people do you need to run a relatively modern and safe sewer system, or electrical grid, you know, uh, all the big infrastructure stuff.
Hmm.
Like, what's the minimum necessary number of families to yeah, sorry.
I mean, that's a great question. And like what design questions do you answer differently based off of trying to design solutions to those problems for limited community sizes? Because there's a lot of stuff that we solve the way we do because we're aggregating so much into such large cities. And like that takes a level of unity that we simply can't produce in our society right now. Uh, we don't have the patience for unity. Like you unity requires a lot of patience because you have to
Like,
be willing to wait for the consensus.
yeah,
And
tolerance and patience and a lack of convenience for the individual.
and a an increase in recognition that the other, whoever the other is also a divine being like you. Like that's what's when I see identity politics or anything that's identitarian in nature, it is actually working 100% against that sense that there is a divine nature in the other person that you're talking to. Because it's, well, you're actually less than me, is kind of where it ends up being. And like people will use their identities as justifications for why they are either better or why, you know, oh, well, you need to recognize what's happened to me and my people instead of everyone saying, stuff's been messy.